Recently, Discotheque dubbed and released a Blu-ray for Lovely Complex. Lovely Complex has a dub written by people who openly despise the script. In a now deleted post, Jello Apocalypse, yes, goes on a diatribe about the series' problematic aspects and how Discotheque Media, quote, mostly let them do whatever they want. Unacceptable. Now, we have the deleted post. Let's take a quick listen. Full disclosure, I just want to say, we watched Lovely Complex for Podcast 45's Watch Club. Okay? And although I reserve the right to change my mind once I read the words written here by Jello Apocalypse and the overall cuntiness that I'm expecting, I'm okay with this dub personally, from what I've heard so far. Now, this video is 13, almost 14 minutes long, and so far I've only been able to hear the first 3.5 minutes. Nothing,
and it's
is
24 episode
egregious.
Series.
Yeah, it's a 24 episode series. So Lord knows. I did just buy it. I literally bought it tonight off Amazon. So
now, ladies and gentlemen, direct your attention to the back. Look at that tiny boy over there.
Oh, God. I know how this works. You say you're giving up, but really you're gonna sit around and hope he asks you out for no reason.
Oh, a bad idea.
Whatever. It's not like I even want to kiss him or anything, you dumb bakas. It's fine.
You know, Risa, sometimes I feel bad for Otani. What are you, 6 years old?
Yeah, I'm just a little stink baby.
The only thing they want to do together is...
Yay! Unibosu!
okay.
The Bacchus line was insufferable.
All right. What's the character from Fate Grand Order, Osaka Hime or whatever? I fucking love that Japanglish where Gomenasari.
So what is it? To clarify, when I heard the you dumb Bacchus thing, I'm like, oh, this is the outtakes. But as we see in the very first line, if we get that comment out of my view site,
Marissa and I wrote an anime dub, the Love dub compilation video.
And it says, here's a compilation video of all my favorite moments from the English dub.
Mm-hmm.
It does not say outtakes. And later on, it makes it clear that, yeah, that's not the outtakes. That's the dub.
So we'll get to it in a moment. But I do want to mention that Jello Apocalypse's overall perception of the show is that the show sucked and their dub makes it better. And I agree from what I've heard so far, because this show was pretty trash. And I mean, it's like, let me put it this way. I remembered almost nothing from it. The only thing I remember is that at one point, the girls are giving advice to the main girl, telling her that she needs to work to get the guy's attention. So they suggest showing her boobs, but not her real boobs, her metaphorical boobs. And obviously I only remember that because that's what we titled Podcast 45, metaphorical boobs.
So basically you're saying the show is so trash that it's okay if they turn it into an abridged series to give you a laugh at least.
Yeah, because that effectively is my point, that the show itself is not anything spectacular. So
that doesn't give it the okay though.
Okay.
Just saying.
I'm just saying that I personally view this as an improvement on the experience I originally had watching it. Okay. There is a whole separate argument to be made about, what we talked about with the sexy Tanaka-san mangaka killing herself over people not, respecting the original work that she had done and all that. That's a whole nother discussion we can have right now. But I'm just saying that as far as I'm concerned, I actually see this as an improvement on this particular show, because I watched it originally and it wasn't that good. However, that's based exclusively on basically what I just showed you so far. Okay, so we're gonna see what we've got here, but so far I think that it seems like it would actually be fun to watch, just simply because they're gonna do stuff you're not expecting. So it kind of keeps you at the edge of your seat. But again, let's see the overall cuntiness. So here's a compilation of all my favorite moments from the English dub of Lovely Complex, scripts written by Marissa Lenti and myself, with both of us directing the actors as well. This post is free, So this is on their Patreon. And the reason we can see it, the reason it's been archived or was able to be archived is because they made the post free, meaning it wasn't locked behind a paywall. This post is free because I wanted to talk about our work on this show, but I obviously don't want to paywall it as I don't own it.
Now, that may have been a mistake in hindsight.
Mistake! So the full explanation about this show and the Dubs production is below. You may find it interesting to read this before watching the above clips. It's a bit of a long and winding road to get to the compilation above, but I think it's worth it. Or you can just watch the video, no thoughts, head empty, and enjoy it. That's how I did it, and I did enjoy it. I hope you think these clips are funny, because I do. Even though it came out nearly 2 decades ago, Lovecom did not have a dub until Sound Cadence CEO Amber Lee Connors grabbed the rights to dub it from Discotek because it was an old favorite of hers. Discotek did not want to order a dub because dubs are typically very expensive.
Which is ironic because in the comments of the Twitter thread, there were people saying, "Oh, redub it now that you know that they fucked with the dub." They didn't even want to dub it in the first place. Why would they ever redub it?
So Sound Cadence endeavored to make the dub while spending as little money as possible. This production was almost entirely asking people to cash in favors. The leads both played their parts for free, and Marissa was set to write and direct the adaptation also for free. 'Twas a labor of love, To save money on all the extra voices, most of the voices in this dub were grabbed in an unusual way. Usually, companies that dub anime are working on more than one show at a time. If they have an actor in for show A and they have any extra time in that session, they may bring that actor into show B to voice some background extras. Because the actor is already there for another show and they're being paid the same amount of money for the same time slot, it makes sense to utilize them in multiple shows. Funimation/Crunchyroll also does this because this saves a lot of time and money. Lovecom was dubbed almost entirely in this way, which is one of the many reasons this dub took 2+ years to come out into the world of simuldubs and come out in a world of simuldubs and weekly releases. The other reason this dub took so long is that the production was cursed. I'm not at liberty to go into all of the details, but suffice to say that anything that could go wrong at some point did. Marissa's spine snapped just before they finished directing, and I had to take over directing the leads for the last third of the series because I was the only other person who would do it for free. Nobuko's actor was literally deported at one point mid-production. So Hayden Davia is a Canadian-American voice actor who has done work for Funimation Entertainment/Crunchyroll.
I don't think they're Canadian-American because they got deported.
Well, we'll listen to this. Shut your mouth right now. They are engaged to fellow voice actor Alejandro Saab. Are, as in currently engaged. And both were married on August 12th, 2022.
Did they go back to being engaged?
Yeah. maybe after they got deported for the sham green card marriage, they returned to engaged status. Also, Hayden is non-binary and goes by they them pronouns. All right, that's important. We're gonna keep a tally here. My involvement started when Marissa told me she was annoyed about having to localize the scripts for this show because she had just watched through the show and didn't really like the characters.
Oh, really? Fascinating.
I thought this would be a good opportunity to get some experience writing localization scripts in case I ever wanted to write a dub. Maybe Bomberman Jetters or something. I don't know.
Just in case. This project isn't the like, I'll give it my full force. It's like, this is my just in case.
Yeah. So I volunteered to help out. They're trying to break in.
Which, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, there's quite high standards to meet to actually, be involved in producing a dub, apparently.
The two of us spent many, many hours across many, many days slogging through Lovecom episodes. And while Marissa thought she sort of hated Lovecom's original writing, I came to the conclusion that I definitely hated Lovely Complex. It is quite unprofessional to openly shit talk a property you've worked on in this industry. Lenti cannot express any opinions, as they have an official relationship with Sound Cadence Studios, Discotech, and Toei Animation. I, however, will tell you her secrets. No, I, however, was a freelancing contractor and do not have any of those things. I am not speaking for Lenti anywhere in this post.
Except you already did.
Yeah, too late. Yeah. Who can say what Lenti thinks? I'm sure I don't know. But I will tell you what I think. And I think that Lovecom is a bad show about Risa Koizumi, an actual psychopath and all-over useless freak. Risa is an inconsistently written, awful character who does nothing but miscommunicate and cause problems. I 100% agree with that. 100%. Like, the parts of the show that come back flooding into my memory are that she is like waffles back and forth on like how she feels, and it just feels random. Like, roll the dice and determine how she should respond to this versus how she responded the previous time. She's actively abusive towards Otani the entire series. Also true. Every time she does something wrong, the narrative gaslights you by having the entire cast act like it's Otani's fault. She will then yell at him until he gives her a gift to make it up to her. I hate her terribly. This is a Risa Koizumi call-out post. I could go on for hours about the stupid things Risa says and does, but I think the best example is probably the following. After 2.5 years of poorly wooing Otani, they finally start dating. Almost immediately afterwards, her coworker, a 14-year-old boy, tries to kiss her on the mouth while she's asleep. That's assault! I mean, underage, though. I mean, is it assault? Will he be tried as an adult? Otani sees this and assumes she's cheating on him. But the misunderstanding is quickly explained and all is well. So then, of course, Risa decides to go on a date with her assaulter out of pity and then not tell her boyfriend about it. And then he discovers her doing this, so he breaks up with her, obviously. For some reason, the next episode, the entire cast turns to Otani and is like, damn, dude, when are you going to forgive Risa? It's so fucking awful. Again, I agreed. I actually agree. This show is not anything special. And honestly, the whole time I was watching it, I was just like, I was more just like enamored by how awful the characters were, right? Like I remember the reason I liked the live action movie more is because the actress who plays Risa is likable and like gorgeous compared to the way they draw her. Like she's actually very pretty in the live action, and in the show she looks like in half the time you see her in the show she has a Sherpa's like ugly face from Golden Kamui going on. So anyway, the show has a myriad of other issues too. The pacing is insane, for one thing. Episodes 1 through 6 and 19 through 24 are breakneck, with multiple plot lines being resolved in a single episode. But then the pacing slows to an absolute crawl between episodes 7 through 18, where quite literally nothing happens over the course of 2 years, to the point the characters themselves start complaining about it. Are you tired of generic high school anime rom-coms having stock episodes like the Valentine's episode, the summer break episode, and the festival episode? Well, how about having 3 of each of them?
I mean, disagree. Those are the best episodes. Have you seen the Bleach Beach episode? No.
That's what slice of life is, though. Like,
so interestingly, the other thing I remember from this show is the Valentine's episode, because I used a clip of
which one? There's apparently 3 of them.
I don't remember there being 3, but the Valentine's episode has the obligation chocolate, and she has to do that thing where she gives chocolate to a guy who likes her that she doesn't like. So she puts something, I forget specifically what it is. It's in the clip that I made for the Tenga chocolate clip on the channel. But she puts something on the cake that makes it clear, like I hate you or whatever. And it's not specifically that. It's something like just friends or something like that. I don't remember. So I was pretty baffled by this after we finished the series. So of course I did that thing I always do when I'm baffled by something being terrible. I go looking for an explanation. It turns out there were quite a few storylines that didn't make it into the anime. So what was the deal? The story arcs they left out of the manga all fucking sucked. And frankly, I respect the Toei staff for deciding to cut those. Like the arcs where an adult woman is hired to seduce Otani, a teenage boy. First disagree. Put it in the...
Get back into this. Get back into the animation studio. Animate those brains.
Or the other arc where an adult woman tries to seduce Otani, a teenage boy. Or the two entire arcs and several prominent running gags about fucking transphobia. I disagree with everything that's been said this entire paragraph. Give me the Chinese conversion therapy. I need that episode. All right. Perhaps the thing Lovely Complex is most infamous for is the above character, Seiko, who happens to be played by Oz in our dub. Seiko is a male to female trans girl. Now, according to my anime list, Seishiro Seiko Kotobuki, she is biologically male and states that God placed her in the wrong body. Prefers to be called Seiko instead of Seishiro because it sounds more feminine. Gave Otani his first kiss, but he later found out she was physically male when she took off her shirt when tending to his injury in the school infirmary. She was afraid that Otani would think she was disgusting, but Otani stated that he didn't think such a thing and they remained friends. Okay. Now, as you can see, played by a woman in every incantation, except possibly the English one. It's one of those faces that looks feminine enough that you would agree could pass as a woman, just a woman you're not attracted to, right? So let's see here. So Seiko is a male to female trans girl who is introduced in a trans panic episode. It is not great. The original episode has a random extra out her. The rest of the cast making fun of Otani for kissing a boy, and gives Nobuko this extremely weird anti-trans radar that makes her dislike Seiko right off the bat. Which character is Nobuko?
Enriv says, I only know Nobuko as the one fondling her boobs in the opening.
Well, we're going to have to pull this up.
That's a pretty messed up thing to do, even if you're not trans.
Hold on, let me just slow this down. This is the cake, by the way. This is the obligation chocolate or whatever. There, Nobuko. This character is a trans lyncher, according to Jello. In the anime, Haruka and Seiko are the best characters, and every time they show up, the episode gets better. In the original manga, Haruka has a running joke where he constantly uses a grabber arm to try and lift Seiko's skirt to expose her privates, which is a fucked up thing to do, even when it isn't being done for transphobic reasons.
Man, I guess people can't have negative character traits. They'll have to be sterilized to be a neutral party to everything and everything.
How dare Apocalypse grab Mystique by the throat? This awful gag is alluded to in the anime's opening below, but thankfully does not make it into the show itself. I'd like to give Marissa insane props for doing absolutely everything they could to handle this element of the show, of the production, respectfully. The Seiko introductory episode is about Seiko's gender identity, so it's not like we could write it out entirely.
Entirely? Keyword.
Yeah. But we changed a lot of things to take the edge off. Nobuko's initial dislike of Seiko was changed from, I don't know, I don't like her, my trans radar is going off, which is written in quotes. Because definitely when this show was originally done in 2007, that got written into the script for sure.
Right.
Because trans was a common term, and outing trans people was something that was happening in 2007. So it was changed from, I don't know, I don't like her, my trans radar is going off, to being jealous. There's another cute girl on campus and not wanting to lose out on, to a freshman. Well, what's really funny when I watched this for podcast 45 is that my wife and I were watching it together because she read the manga, I believe. I don't remember if she actually read the manga or she was just interested in watching it. So we picked it so my wife and I could watch a show that she's been wanting to watch. But when Seiko shows up and starts getting, it's not that she is even getting Otani's attention. It's that she wants Otani's attention, right? And comes in as a rival to the main girl, Risa, right? And I remember predicting moments before it happens, that's a dude, right? Like I remember saying that, right? When my wife and I were watching it. And then literally 10 seconds later, the character is taking off their shirt and you're revealed that the character is a dude, right? So anyway, so they say that I don't like her, my trans radar is going off is what is written in quotes. Now later we're going to see
stolen from your line.
Right. later we're going to see that that in the manga, the reason Nobuko dislikes her is because they see this character as being more fashionable or a rival, as being the cutest dressed at school, sort of thing. So in the sub, Otani and Risa's end of episode reactions could generously be called confused, but they got the spirit. What does that mean? Got the spirit?
Maybe the spirit that they think sus.
We rewrote those to be a lot more supportive of Seiko, especially Otani's dialogue, which made it pretty clear he was still kind of disgusted by her. So you wrote that dialogue. Previously, oh no, we were reading my anime list who said that they're still friends and he wasn't disgusted. Right? That was like word for word, like the words they used, not disgusted. Seiko feared that Otani would be disgusted, but he said, nah, fam, it's cool. Just put your clothes back on, please.
Yeah, let's just be friends.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
It's like no hate or anything. Stunning and brave, but I don't want any of this. Just so we're clear, it's kind of fucked up. You try to fool guys. And Oz's performance as Seiko is so good that I cry every time while I watch it now, for good reasons even. Let me play for you a clip that I to give you a reference on the voice actor Oz, right? Which is Civ Ryan. Oz says, for this episode, I got to portray Sarasa acting out a lot of different character archetypes. Kageki Shoujo is an anime about plays, right? But my favorite way to portray Sarasa is when she's just acting as me. Here we go.
Yay! Our big auditions are tomorrow. Somebody talk to me!
This voice actor plays literally 2 roles. Right now, look, did I or did I not read that the way that they got this dubbed is they just took people who were doing another show and brought them in for the lines? Now,
but spoiler alert, this is the first role that they've actually voiced. So did they just do it for free?
Do they later go on to say that in the thing we're reading, or?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Contradicted yourself there, didn't you, Jello? This is their Twitter bio is artist surprise round RPG and stabbiness tabletop RPGs, Seiko in Lovely Complex, Sarasa and Kageki Shoujo, Trixie in Epithet Erased. Oh, they got it a third role. Gender fluid, he, him, she, her. So with that in mind, that dub I showed you guys is how Oz identifies their voice and whatnot. Like, why is nobody listening to me? Anyway, again, no hate on the voice actors. They're all doing their best. Lenti passed the episode and its script by multiple trans sensitivity readers and not only made sure to cast a trans person as Seiko, but also to cast as many of the trans actors who auditioned for her as possible. When they say for her,
They mean the trans character.
Do they mean all of the trans? They put out a roll call like, hey, trans voice actors, who wants to play Seiko? And then every single person,
non-binary person that tried out for Seiko, the people that didn't make it, she tried to incorporate.
She tried to cast them somewhere else. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if auditioned for her meant auditioned for Marissa Lenti. Like they came into audition. Oh, you're trans, you got a role, you know, but, or do they mean audition for
it's
Seiko?
Not far off. Let's be clear.
Yeah. I mean, either way, it's same result pretty much. Right. So they go on to say, I don't have an exact number, but I think the Lovecom dub has something like 20 trans/non-binary actors in it. It's one of the transiest anime dubs in existence, if not the transiest. Trans rights. So the point here is that whole statement that Jello Apocalypse wrote, which again can't speak for Marissa, can only speak for himself, is indicative of somebody who chose to use the dub as a vessel to employ their trans actors in the industry, rather than
over qualifying them by their identity over their performance.
Right.
I'm theorizing that the people who were passionate about this project at the start and then grew to hate it probably were so passionate because they're like, oh my god, it's like one of the first trans characters in anime. Oh, we need to dub it. And then they realized how bad the show was and they're like, that's my working theory.
All right. So in addition to Oz Ryan in this first anime role ever, in his...
Now,
they're gender fluid, so in this paragraph they can keep switching between.
That just means you can use whatever the fuck you want at any given moment. Call them a clown or a jester. Okay, so in addition to Oz Ryan in his first anime role ever as Seiko, this was recorded before Sarasa and Kageki Shoujo, which is an incredible performance that I absolutely recommend you watch, by the way. Again, look, Jello. You don't also have to bend over backwards to suck the girl cock while you're describing the trans actor. Look, you could just say they're very
how they operate, though. They're
right? Not like I am literally brought to tears every moment I hear her voice.
This is how they operate, though. This is like every single actor. Like, remember when they were sucking off the Yoruichi change? Like, this is the exact same thing. This is the exact same behavior. It's their MO at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, this was also the first anime that Tom Armanez Laughlin showed up in. It also features fan favorite Gianni Metragrano as the gross teacher character. Yes, there is an arc about Risa falling in love with him. Yes, it's awful. I mean, it isn't anything special. It's not any more awful than the rest of the series, I'll be honest. It is cringe, yeah. Despite everything about the original incarnation of this anime, this dub turned out just so funny. We really funneled our frustrations into comedy and wrote a lot of good jokes while also improving as much of the relationship between the leads as possible. there are lots of scenes where Risa yells at Otani, and a lot of scenes where Otani reacts to Risa by inappropriately laughing at her. He has the funniest fucking laugh in the Japanese version, if I recall correctly.
Oh,
Like
really?
it's
'Cause he hates
so
his voice actor.
it's so inappropriate, like the way it sounds, and it's just hilarious when it happens.
Or whatever.
Improving the relationship between the leads in Lovecom took surgical precision, and I still wouldn't call it a healthy relationship.
Oh,
but
improving.
But I did my absolute best to make sure Risa and Otani had enough positive characteristics that them falling for each other made some kind of sense. I think we especially improved Otani. He starts kind of annoying, but by the end of the series, I think I would call him genuinely pretty cute. Risa's
Wow.
unsalvageable, though.
Look, I think her being unsalvageable saves the show from being completely rewritten. Because if she was somehow salvageable, she'd be changed from a piece of garbage into like, oh, she's actually like okay.
Yeah,
or
well, the
something,
reason
right?
she's unsalvageable is she's so fucking hideous. Fun fact, we canonically wrote and directed Risa as a psychopath who doesn't understand empathy, and Otani being in a cycle of abuse without realizing it, because that's the only way their highly inconsistent actions make any kind of sense. Once again, I agree, having seen this show, that it is absurd the amount of bullshit he puts up with that he does not deserve, and the amount of times he has to come back and apologize for being right.
I'll say this though, if the original mangaka writes it that shittily, you just have to go with it. That's how it's written.
I'm going to give deference here, because I think when he says we canonically wrote and directed Risa as a psychopath who doesn't understand empathy, right? I think that kind of is the way she acts in terms of like, I mean, he's using very colorful language to describe the fact that she's so dense that she doesn't realize how selfish and self-absorbed she is, right? Like I mean, look, fucking, she gets kissed while sleeping, and there's that whole thing we read about where he thinks she's cheating, gets mad, but then when it's immediately cleared up and he understands, he forgives her, obviously, because she didn't do anything wrong. And then she fucking does the thing that he thought she was doing and gets caught again. You know, like, she's a complete psychopath. Anyway.
Yeah. I'm just saying that if they're trying to, like, I don't know, soften some blows here and there and whatever, it's like, oh yeah, she's not over, like, making her not the absolute slime ball or whatever to try and make it seem reasonable, feasible that, oh yeah, maybe she could date her. It's like, I don't know, just let them have the full treatment how it's in the sub or whatever.
Yeah, but
like,
I'm just saying, like, that effectively is what the sub gives you, right? That's effectively what you get. So they go on to say, at one point, Otani literally tells Risa he, quote, bought a gift for her in preparation for the next time she got mad at him, which is what resolves their current tiff. That's a trauma response, and it's in the sub. Uh-oh, sisters. Frankly, having the dub come out this good in the end is a little frustrating. Anyone who watches this show as a kid and has fond memories of it and revisits the dub will think, wow, it's just as good as I remember. No, it isn't. We made it good. This show sucked. I agree. The amount of rough edges we shaved off of this are entirely invisible unless you buy the Blu-ray and turn on the dub while also keeping the Japanese subtitles on, which allows you to listen to our edits in real time.
Yeah, there you go.
So but you can't, because it's sold out.
There's a lot to unpack about the way he phrases that, though. It's like, it sucked before or whatever, and they're just like, when they watch it now, because it's so improved, it feels just as good as when they watched it back in the day. So they won't realize how bad it was. When the way I'm seeing it is that you also have the potential to watch it and think, this is way worse. What happened? Why is she not a psychopath or whatever? This is so different, right? He's making it sound like it's so wildly different based on their changes. That's why it's like I want to do what he's saying and watch it with the subs or whatever on and see what happened. What's all the changes?
Honestly, I'm a little irritated that we already did it for a watch club, because I would love to revisit it, you know, and get an idea, just because, like, I don't know, it's just, I'm curious, and I really don't want to sit through 24 episodes unless I'm doing it for the watch club, you know. Yeah, I think so. The way I look at it is, it almost sounds like people, and possibly even you, are interpreting it as, if you grew up watching the dub, or the sub rather, of Ghost Stories, and then as an adult watched the dub and thought, oh, it's just as good as I remember. Obviously, it's a completely different show. This is not a completely different show. Like, this is the same show, effectively, with the tropes taken to 11, in terms of like the bit at the beginning I showed where he's like, look at this tiny boy, right? It's like drawing attention to the character being short and doing it in an exceptionally silly way is effectively what they're doing. They're taking the premise of, okay, it's written in the script as teacher notices how short he is and accidentally draws attention to it. Now it's overt, like teacher callously calls him a tiny boy, right, in an almost mocking tone, right? So it's like there is a slight deviation from what the original intent was, but done in such a way that amplifies the fact, like, originally it's like, oh, it's an accidental drawing attention of how short he is.
I guess
now
the better way to put it,
right,
is that, like, what is it? All the malice will be, well, not all the malice, but just for example, like, there's implications that some malice will be like not sterilized or neutralized, but like toned down. So it's like Risa isn't going to be this bitch who's like cutting through your soul. It'll be like kind of like sterilized and normalized. It's like, oh, she's not as like harsh as I remember or whatever. Which I don't know. I'm not saying that, oh, her character's better or worse because she's not as much of a bitch. But I'm just saying that that's not going to be the same experience. So I don't know.
Honestly, from what I remember, I'll just say, like, I find it hard to believe there are people who would think to themselves, oh, my childhood favorite show. Like, the show is really, like, it's one of those things
I'm
where
more concerned about the casting sucking ass.
I'm just saying it's not hard. It's one of those shows where people say, is that show good? And your response is, I can think of 5 shows that are better easily, you know? So this is the part we just read with Scratch Point saying, Japanese media is not a vessel for the localizer's opinions or cringeworthy sense of humor. This type of, quote, I know better than the writer attitude is way too common and needs to be abolished. Replace them with people who actually enjoy the material.
Now, in defense of the enjoyment of the material thing, he, and I think Marissa as well, grew the hatred as they went. And I believe you can work on a show you hate and faithfully adapt it. However, I don't know if that's, if I can say that this is being faithfully adapted and hated. So
I also feel like we are in a world right now where it has become impossible to view this from
the artist.
No, view it from like a more unbiased perspective, because just like how, like, for example, I don't know, like, specifically what movie I would think of, you know, off the top of my head, but take any movie from, let's say, mid 2000s or earlier that has, let's say, an interracial couple or something like that, right? If that movie were made today, it is impossible to look at it and not think, oh, they gave them an interracial couple for diversity points or something, right? Like it feels like the decision was motivated by politics is ideally like the a better way to put it, right? So I think we live in a world now where any localization change, like it becomes impossible to watch the show or hear the dub or whatever and not tilt your head at some of the choices, right? Like for example, we're currently watching My Dress Up Darling as the watch club for the podcast, and there's a lot of Zoomer lingo in it, like in an almost uncomfortable amount. But
Yeah.
I have to ask myself, does Marin use Japanese lingo that is the equivalent effectively? And it's actually an appropriate way to dub the show to have her using this sort of language.
One
Because
thing she said is, "Thank you." What does that mean? Thank
well,
you.
so she's saying thank you instead of arigato.
Well,
thank you.
The subs on the version I read said thanksies.
Mm-hmm. That's what I also had. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could argue that her using English.
Yeah, and again, this is the thing: is it becomes, if you're watching a show where the character's speaking Japanese, and then specifically for certain lines chooses to say it in English. I mean, I guess you could have the English dub have her say arigato, but it doesn't have the same amount of lip flaps.
That would be kind of interesting.
Or merci.
Like, merci, yeah. Like in French, just use
French.
another language to make it like gracias, right? Or something like that. So you could, or, you can find another way to have her do it. Now, what does she say in the English dub? Because the subtitles say thanksies, but what does she actually say?
I was watching sub at that time, so I don't know.
So, but you get what I mean now. Like it's become now it's impossible to observe creative decisions made in a dubbing localization process without feeling like it's you have to nitpick it or whatever. Nobuko is probably the best character in the series. She's Risa's best friend who tries to set the main couple up, but she quickly runs out of patience with their antics. Over the course of the localization, Nobuko became our favorite character to write. Her repetitive conversations with Risa quickly get more and more insane, and we end up voicing our own frustrations through her more often than not. Eventually...
That's a really weird thing to say.
Eventually headcanoning her as, quote, hating Risa terribly, but there's only so many girls to hang out with in high school. And it'll be over once we graduate. So what are we going to do? Hilariously, the series actually more or less confirms this angle by the last few episodes, where Nobuko is actively hiding the fact she's moving away from Risa, probably because she knows Risa will freak out about it.
Yeah, but you do that if you're the best friend as well, because you're like, I don't want to break their heart. I don't know.
Everyone else in the cast knows except Risa and Otani. It's very funny. We just happened to write Nobuko's breaking point a little earlier than the sub did.
What does that tell you? Like,
anyways,
they have to change something to make their breaking point earlier than the sub. What?
Again, I'd have to rewatch the show to really I don't know. I'm more excited now. It's like finally a chance to watch this and enjoy myself instead of have it be a chore. Anyways, all of that is to say, Lenti and I spent a long time on this dub. I'm very, very proud of the work we did. I think we turned an unremarkable and frustrating 3 out of 10 show into a pretty funny and mostly watchable 7 out of 10. So, in not so many words, that's kind of how I feel about it in terms of I would never revisit this show willingly without the dub, and if it was a dub that was, to the same caliber of what the sub was in terms of the Japanese dub, I would still go into it begrudgingly, I want to show off what we did. However, I don't really want to recommend that people watch LoveCom in order to see it.
So once again, confirming that is not a blooper reel.
Yeah.
Also,
listen,
how can you say that it's a watchable 7, but then say still don't watch it?
Right. Well, yeah. Listen,
I don't think you believe it's a 7.
I love how he said it's mostly watchable. So it's ironic. After reading this, I don't give a shit about any of the things he decried. So it's like, for me, it's got to be an 8 out of 10, right? This is one of those series that was written by a very strange person, kind of like 50 Shades of Grey. Wow, that's a statement. And it just gets stranger and stranger the longer you look into it. The way all the characters talk and interact is wrong. The way Risa is painted as the good guy, despite makes exclusively bad decisions, makes everything feel like it's written by a woman with "I hate drama" in her Twitter bio, and then 5 separate call-out tweets right below it.
Maybe that's the character.
You get the sense the author sees the world the same way Risa Koizumi does, and Risa Koizumi as a character only makes sense if she is a psychopath who does not understand human empathy. Of note, the mangaka also makes a cameo in the final episode of the anime. She shows up as a fashion designer, and everybody praises how pretty and talented she is. She then tells Risa, "It's my job to make you look good." I think you failed, ma'am. Lenti was the head writer on this, and all their decisions were final. Wait, is Lenti a they, them?
Yeah.
But I did tell them that if we didn't cut the characters praising the manga out of the episode in our dub, I would quit the co-writing position.
That's the funniest part of this. He actually was like, "I will quit doing this thing that I volunteered to do for free for passion."
Otani talks about slapping Risa nonstop in the sub. Oh no, really? Oh, come
You
on.
wouldn't know though. They reduced the slap count.
Oh man, if I was rewriting this, I'd have made it even more like misogynistic. Bitch, you shut up before I slap you.
Well, see what he says.
We've removed almost all of those except maybe 1 or 2 instances because having your leading man's catchphrase be "I'm going to physically assault you" is not great.
So how do you feel about that potential change?
I definitely
I feel like that would take
finally
a lot.
I have found a thing I can't get past.
Found the tipping point.
Returning
That's what
my
I mean, though.
Amazon
It will
order.
take away some of the character. It could.
I need the character to be even more aggressive with how much he's gonna pow right in the kisser to the moon, Alice, right?
This is the comments in the Patreon post.
Yes. So at the end of it, he said, "Let me know if you have any questions," right? So subject 53 says, quote, "Was there ever any pushback in terms of accurately portraying the characters? Like, were you beholden to anyone to retain the integrity of Lovely Complex? Or was it more of, oh yes, please excise as much transphobia as you can from this. Thank you." Jello Apocalypse says, "The discotheque guys mostly let Lenti do whatever she wanted. It helps that most of the, quote, accurate character portrayal in the sub is comprised of weird, inconsistent character tics that never amount to anything. Take Nobuko's anti-trans radar, for example. That comes up maybe 3 times. She seemingly hates Seiko for no reason, never explains why, and then Seiko walks up to her and says, 'Nice bracelet.' After that, Nobuko decides to be friends with her."
This is what I mean. It's like, if it's written that poorly, just do it that way.
The original character trait never amounted to anything, never made sense, never came up again, and wasn't funny in the first place. So changing it to an equally baffling, "I hate my fashion rival, oh, never mind, I like her now because she complimented my bracelet," is just a lateral move, really. And as far as I know, that's the context in the manga, is that Nobuko sees Seiko as a fashion rival. Another, quote, change we made is the bet Otani and Risa make. In early episodes, the, quote, main plot centers around the two of them trying to get a boyfriend/girlfriend before the other. This bet is the driving force behind episodes 2 and 3, I believe. But after that, the plot thread is dropped entirely, even though nobody won. We added a few more mentions of that bet several episodes later and had them refer back to it to make the story flow a little more smoothly.
So it's not a tie when they start dating. That's not how it resolves. But either way, I think it's just kind of weird that it's like we inserted like a line that's completely out of context because obviously they didn't bring it up again just to try and tie it back together or whatever. But like once again, I can get why you can look at this as like, okay, this is the screenplay for like an original work we're doing, but that doesn't happen. So it's weird to just kind of bring it up and insert it. Like, I mean, once again, we'd have to see the actual thing, but that's just my sus radar going off.
From the first example of what he was saying there, where she got complimented on her bracelet and then kind of became friends with the trans character or whatever. And if you're saying that that was basically in the subs anyway, and the change that they're making is just making it more like nail on the head dialogue so that it's apparent, whereas something might have been played off as subtext in the subtitles where you kind of had to, oh, you know, I guess that's what happened. In the dub, it's like, no, that is what happened. Oh, you liked my bracelet, okay, now we can be friends. You know, the subtitles maybe understood that you could put 2 and 2 together, right?
So you're saying the subtitle could have been something like, oh my god, I love the blue on your bracelet or whatever. And it's like, you know, maybe we could get some coffee sometime where in the English dub you're speculating maybe it's super blunt, like, I like your bracelet. Let's be friends.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then taking credit for like a change, like, oh, we made it better, I don't know, seems weird. But also, as a localizer, you have to take things into account that the Japanese might do that would be normal for them, and you would have context, obviously.
Like eating jelly
Japanese.
donuts.
Yeah. Like when someone says, come here, right? In Japanese, it's underhanded, right? They motion downward.
Yeah, I
their
always
hand.
found that weird.
Like that?
Yeah. And in America, you would motion
You
upward.
you would do it like come here, but they do it like, hey.
Like
so when you're localizing it, right, you might want to throw in a dub if you can sneak it in, like if they're not focused on the mouth or something.
Get over here.
I don't know where the meow comes in, but
he says because it's like a cat's paw.
So the localization is meow. And it's like, what are you doing with your hand, Junichi?
That would be an example of going the opposite direction.
Yeah.
What I'm suggesting.
No, I say you'd sneak in like "come here," even though they're not actually saying "come here" in the subtitles ever, right?
Yeah.
But you're adding that context that the North American audience wouldn't have.
Personally, just so we're 100% on this, this is that specifically is one of the things that I find like that's what is important about localization, right? Like conveying the story, and this is why like the literal translation thing just does not work in every instance. Localizing is an art form to be able to, figure out where you can unobtrusively make changes that improve. Like it might not be line per line, but scene for scene, you can make a change that conveys the overall point that needed to be there for you to follow. So there are times when you need to be very artful in how you're adapting things. So I do want to read this part. Of note, most anime distributors do tend to ask that you don't advertise changes like making things less transphobic. This is because large swaths of the anime community are racist, sexist, transphobic, and will descend upon a company's social media page for weeks for the strangest things.
Descend, my monkeys!
Discotech added a content warning on one of their discs and got flack for that. So they're understandably a little skittish now. Funny/Crunchy works like this too. So
in other words, call them out next time they do that, and it works apparently.
So Discotech did that to The Pursuit of Harimau's Treasure, right?
It's also stupid that they do it and then they fucking censor shit anyway. Like the what was that game we covered last podcast that did that?
That was Apollo. The
Ace Attorney, right?
Ace Attorney Apollo.
And the Tomb Raider, which I think we're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about,
upcoming.
Yeah. So, 1 second while I look up. Oh, that's weird.
I'm glad to know that they actually are hearing and actually acting on the feedback. That includes the thing that comes up later in this sentence or whatever, because it includes sexism and patriarchy.
All right. I pulled this from the doc of like podcast 111, I think. We've got a new loop on from the Loop On Factory 2 The Pursuit of Harry Mouse Treasure. It includes a restoration of the original dub with Sonny Strait and Chris Sabat, as well as great new HD transfer from the original negatives. And this one's a little dated and contains some outdated and unkind stereotypes. Because of this, we've tried our best to give this special context, including a warning up front, as well as an essay from Justin Savakis that talks about homophobia in anime of the era. And
I forgot about that whole part. They went like above and beyond.
They had a whole essay and everything. Yeah. So the character's name is Herman von Diet, which in some of the dubs is, or some of the localizations is referred to as hermaphrodite.
When are we watching this one for a watch club?
There was also an essay in Angel Cop, but there wasn't a content warning that I remember.
This program, the program featured on this Blu-ray disc contains themes that are antagonistic towards LGBT people. Literally, the theme is that the LGBTQ person is the villain. Like, that's the theme. And that person tries to have sex with men, right? Am I getting this wrong? Is that not exactly what Seiko attempts to do in Lovely Complex? Right? Like the whole trap thing tries to get with Otani, and then later on the other character. Like, I'm not mistaken. That's exactly what we just covered, is it not? So
I don't know if they want to go that far, but hey, I mean, eventually.
It is a product of the time when it was made and depicts prejudices and stereotypes that were then commonplace. These depictions were wrong then and are still wrong today. This program is being presented as originally created because to do otherwise would be the same as denying these prejudices ever existed. Discotheque Media, their partners, respective affiliates, and employees do not support or endorse the views expressed in this program. Viewer discretion is advised. It is laughable, you know. Like, I mean, granted, I'm not gay, but honestly, I am a straight white male, which is the one person type that you're allowed to mock mercilessly. And quite frankly, like, it's not unbearable, and like, I'm ready for suicide because of just how horrible it is to be the one person that you can actively advocate the ending of routinely, repeatedly, every single day on the internet and in real life. And I'm still here, and I'm not literally shaking. You know, like, I just can't imagine.
You know what's ironic about the Angel Cop thing is if they release that today, the whole pro-Israel, like anti-Jewish essay that they wrote would be like they'd need the reverse. You know, these people actually did have a point. Like...
Oh God.
Holy shit.
It's still ridiculous that they
get those content warnings in there.
They put in the content warning to say there was no plot armor back then. We're sorry that there's flaws on a character that's part of the LGBTQ LMNOP plus.
I like to think that if this, if they released that after the October 7th or whatever thing, that they would have just gone ahead and redubbed it with the anti-Semitism.
Yeah, put it back in there. Get back in the recording studio.
I like the idea that I could have had this exact podcast of reading this Patreon post, but instead it's about how, like, oh yeah, we went out of our way to exclusively hire non-Jews. You know, like, everybody who auditioned for the role was accepted. Like, Oh,
This is the most Jewish dub today.
Non-Jewish.
Whoa. The least?
This may be the least Jewish dub, if not the least Jewish dub.
I mean, I think Japan already does that with every show, right?
Oh boy. Okay. TLDR, most animated distributors don't care if you make things nicer or more gay or add more representation. They just ask that you don't flaunt the changes or use buzzwords.
Now, if that's true, that's mildly concerning because once again, it's like, okay, they're just going to try and discreetly make it, more acceptable, more diverse, more whatever.
So when Jamie Markey says they can only come up with one line, again, she knows that she's done this often. And the line that we provide is the one that uses the term patriarchy because it's so overtly egregious that some person on the periphery who's not even watched the show and barely has any idea what localization is will look at that and go, yeah, that's fucked up, right? So he goes on to say here, you're genuinely not allowed to say hot button words like sexism, which I'm pretty sure we just talked about was in this dub, right? Or patriarchy anymore in most funny dubs, okay, unless it's already in the subtitles, because those are words that brain dead weebs get mad about and share on their various image boards. However, you can...
I just want to say something. You know how when you have like constraints on making things like for old NES games, they had limits on color palettes and they had limits on like what they could do in the game. And old movies,
you're
they had
suggesting that like limits actually increase creativity.
Yeah. So what I was saying earlier with the whole X-Men thing, where woke media now, the writers are stupid and they can't generalize any of the core aspects of like bigotry and being othered and ostracization, if I could say that word. And they all have to make it very specific to a core group that they identify with only, and they can't write it in a way that other people can identify with. And so by Funimation banning these words, it's almost like they're forcing the writers to work within a constraint that would allow them to at least slightly get to the point where they're writing less narrow scripts that would apply to more people and not alienate half their fucking audience.
Mm-hmm. So they said you're generally not allowed to say hot button words like sexism or patriarchy anymore. Most funny dubs, unless they already have those in the subtitles, because those are words that brain dead weebs get mad about and share on their various image boards. However, you can say things like chauvinist because that isn't on the buzzword list. You just need to use words that they aren't pre-programmed to hate. The people who get mad about this don't actually have thoughts about these things or know why they hate them. They've just been told to hate specific words because those are the SJW words. It's very embarrassing. LMAO.
Yeah, they also
just says,
I'm sure he hates words like women and men. They're programmed to hate the words.
And then a combination of two genders.
Right. So, yeah, a very NPC behavior and contempt for anime fans. Not a good look. It's not the words in and of themselves. It's the fact that it's an incorrect rewrite rather than a translation. Honestly, I don't even think it is the incorrect rewrite. The problem is it's the contempt that is shown through. For example, we just read about the brain dead, we blah, 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 right? Like clearly there's actual contempt for the fans and that there is possibly decisions being made specifically to punch those individuals, right? It's not so much that they didn't stick to a direct one-to-one translation. Try to fucking imagine how awful that last couple episodes of Black Lagoon would be, where the characters can't speak to each other because they don't speak the same language, if they literally tried to go out of their way to now all of a sudden have Revy start speaking in Japanese to simulate the fact that she actually doesn't speak Japanese in the original Japanese version, even though she is speaking Japanese, so that when a character does speak Japanese, she has to speak she can't understand him by speaking exclusively in English with broken English and stuff. It's like, doing it the way they did makes the show watchable, and it's not an immersion break, right? It is different. It is straight up different from what the original intention was, but it is a welcome change, and it doesn't punch you. It isn't a gut punch that shows the contempt that the localization team would have had for the people they don't like. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a deliberate choice to attack. Now, here's the problem here. These localizers view the source material as punching them. That's why they need to put by the way, gay people haven't always been treated nicely, so we have to make sure that you know that we don't agree with the fact that the villain is gay, or the character.
You can't have guilt by association by putting out this anime.
Yeah, the character whose women's intuition recognizes that they are among a imposter. Oh, that's the trans radar. That's the anti-trans radar going off. So like the lens for which these localizers view things is very much problematic, because they view normal human interaction from an era they aren't currently in as problematic, as something that was a direct attack on things. All right, so these people will admit to rewriting the script because they hated it, and then act as though those who want the original work to be faithfully translated are acting unreasonable. The only unreasonable part is hiring someone that despises the source material.
Once again, I think you can hate the source material and do it faithfully, but otherwise I agree with the sentiment.
I know we've kind of mentioned it a few times, but with South Park, where they can make fun of Star Wars, and both liberals can come away with it thinking it's making fun of conservatives, and conservatives can come away from it thinking it's making fun of liberals. Like, why would you limit your media to only one thing, right? If someone can watch the show and think, oh, this is supporting my idea of, like, the show isn't capitulating to woke shit, why wouldn't you just be okay, like, with that? It's one more customer. Thank you for buying my anime.
Yeah. So the reason that they can write a show that both liberals and conservatives can identify that it's making fun of the other is because Matt Stone and Trey Parker, right? That's what we just said, are equally annoyed by liberals and conservatives. So when they write the show, they actually are writing the contempt for both sides. But the people who see the obvious contempt of the side they're not latch on to agreement for that, and then they view the whole episode from the lens of the part that is digging on the opposing side, right? Whereas what we've got here is we clearly have now. Again, I was reading a little bit on Kiwi Farms, and they were talking about Jello Apocalypse and saying, like, people who are familiar with the individual were saying that during 2016 there was like a Trump derangement syndrome meltdown that occurred, and a whole bunch of their old content that they now view as problematic or whatever in their sprint away from anything related to MAGA or anything like that. They now regret making, and say that anybody who liked their old content that was anti-SJW or anti-liberal is a retard or whatever, although they probably don't use that term. So anyway, Fen says, I feel like adapting anything into something else, whether it's a sub into a dub or something like a book into a movie, should aim to improve on the source and make it work in the new format. If a show is in the 2000s, things are going to have to be updated to make sense for a new audience. Fixing transphobia and adding little references to internet stuff kind of makes sense when having a show set in the ambiguous 2007 to 2017-ish probably era. Things change, and sometimes old media becomes unwatchable because it's horrible in retrospect. I hope old fans see this and can laugh at a show as well as how they've changed it. You get it. This is also a great opportunity to add new jokes. For example, in the clips above, you can see Heikichi and Nobuko talking about cooking sweets. Heikichi suggests using ube as a flavoring agent, which Nobuko says will probably be really popular in about 10 years. This joke assumes Lovely Complex is taking place in the world of 2007 and only makes sense because the dub came out so much later.
I don't get the joke in the.
I don't get the joke.
I think what he's saying is, basically, it's the equivalent of them saying, "Oh, dude, this mustard stuff, people will start putting it on their fries." But the equivalent is they're changing mustard to Szechuan sauce. And in 2015, when it becomes relevant, they're like, haha, this joke makes sense now.
Like the punchline is it'll probably be really popular in about 10 years. But it's like the dub is almost 20 years old, or the show is almost 20 years old at this point. You know, like it's 3 years away from 20 years old.
Yeah, I think they're saying they looked for the foresight of what's popular in 2015, and they changed it to something that canonically, like, oh, that did pop.
See,
up.
and this is a terrible joke because ube, it's like you're making a joke for the Japanese audience, which isn't going to watch the dub. If ube became popular in Japan 10 years later, if that's even what they're making here. There's also that bit where Risa says, "For the win!" Oh, cringe. Originally, the joke is her saying, "For the win" 3 times, louder each time, and then Otani tells her to calm down. Obviously, the phrase "for the win" is insanely outdated, so we decided to tweak the joke a bit. In this version, Otani asked for a more contemporary compliment. Risa compliments him 3 times with 3 pieces of slang that are immediately dated, but dated in different decades. "For the win" is 2000s. Epic is late 2000s and early 2010s, and Poggers, while being contemporary, is also really dated and will probably fall out of popular use soon.
Disagree. Everyone still says Poggers, but it's dated to him because Twitch banned it because the guilt by association. Oh.
All right. So now, knowing that Poggers is used in the anime, can you defend it?
Defend it. I have to hear it in the show.
I don't even know. I don't even know if "for the win" is an accurate translation, but I'm going to assume that maybe she is saying "for the win." Once again,
I don't know.
I don't even think "for the win" is a dated thing. It's just the saying.
Yeah,
no.
But
So
like
in the show, I think what they're saying is that she says "for the win, for the win, for the win" 3 times in the original, right? And she says that's in the Japanese.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is I think that's great if they actually keep it "for the win" because it puts that time capsule on. Yeah, it's from 2007 or whatever. If that is like what she's trying to say anyway. So making it, this is the exact thing I don't want them to do. This is the slime treatment. Epic. Poggers. Poggers is definitely way too far.
I do feel inclined to agree, just largely because Poggers is a term literally the only time I have ever heard Poggers in the wild is that green screen that VTuber did where she says Poggers and then goes, "This is cringe. Kore wa cringe desu." Right? Like
Poggers is like, that's the really popular emote that was on Twitch, right?
Yeah.
So Twitch didn't even exist, and they're dropping Poggers. So that's where the Astro Boy bussin' comes in.
Sure. So yeah, it's certainly not ideal, but I don't know that I would say that it's like literally unwatchable because of that line. It's definitely like, I don't know. Can you think of a better? Can you think of a better alternative?
For the win, for the win, for the win. That's
you would just leave that.
They already had it.
Honestly,
What's wrong
like I
with
said, the jokes are just really not funny.
I'm
in
not
the-
saying it's a good joke,
Yeah.
but at least one immersion break.
I mean, I
in
would,
that case.
I'd like to say she's got to have her back to the viewer, right? Because you wouldn't be able to take For the Win and turn it into epic because it's
Poggers.
like it's one syllable.
That's very true. They're always stingy about lip flaps. They're like, we
Yeah.
have to match the flap.
If someone watches this in 2030, it'll be a nice little slice of pop culture across 2 whole decades between the original release and the dub. I think that's neat. Okay, cringe. All right, so we can move on from here.